Welcome to Slacker Sports Show.
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Slacker Sports Show, where we discuss anything and everything you want to know about sports. Let's welcome in the co-host of the podcast, Mark. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing well. NBA's finished off, MLB's in the World Series, so getting some champions here and there in a couple sports, and kind of been hit and miss as far as getting you guys episodes. We're sorry about that. Just been both of us have been busy, but excited to be back and talking to everybody and getting back into the world of sports.
So let's start off with the NBA that crowned a champion, and I don't think any of us, well, at least I wasn't surprised. I kind of had the Lakers winning it all at the beginning, but Miami seemed like they wanted to put up a fight. They just didn't have the talent to do it every single game. So the Lakers won it, and they are the champions. LeBron gets another ring, and I know you're a big LeBron fan, so we got some other stuff next week. We're actually going to talk about the free agencies coming up, because that might affect the Lakers, because there's some free agency people that are on the line at the Lakers. But we'll talk about that next week. But let's talk about how the Lakers won and LeBron. You're more of a LeBron fan than I am, Mark, so I'll let you talk kind of about it.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really surprised that they won when things started to play out in the finals. I think we both thought that they had the more talented team up top. Maybe Miami had more top to bottom than they did, but they definitely had the top two players by a pretty wide margin. I guess I was surprised just if you're looking at the overall playoffs, kind of how they got there, just not having to face the Clippers. And I know we've talked about this before, but just they had a relatively easy path, which was good for LeBron, who's, what is he, like 35 or 36 around there. Kind of good to have him have an easier path to the finals and have him save kind of some of his energy for that. Like you said, Miami, I think just after the first game or two, when they started having a bunch of injuries, like Goran Dragic got hurt, he had a foot injury. Bam Adebayo had, I think it was a shoulder, I don't remember off the top of my head, but he had some sort of injury. And the whole thing with Miami going in was that basically if they have their full team, they could really kind of stand a chance, or they could at least give the Lakers a fight. And once they start losing those key cogs and more falls on Jimmy Butler, then that was kind of their downfall, I guess. And I'm not saying anything about Jimmy Butler, because he proved in the finals that he's probably one of the top 10 to 15 guys in the league. But just if he's the only guy you're basically counting on that produces regularly, that's probably not enough to beat LeBron and Anthony Davis. So I wasn't really surprised when we got to the finals and you kind of saw it played out, but just the path to get there, and then Miami getting there at all was a surprise. Not because of the talent, but just because there was a lot of talented teams in the East they had to get past. But I don't think too many people were surprised by how this all finished out.
And so LeBron, with his fourth ring, I believe, is it his fourth? And it's been with 3 different teams or 4 different teams?
3. He had 2 in Miami, 1 in Cleveland, and then 1 in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. Everyone wants to talk about the whole Jordan thing and if he's the best player ever, but to do it with so many different teams and with so many different types of players around him, because you look in Cleveland when he went in Cleveland, and I mean, yeah, he had Kyrie Irving, but they didn't have that other star. And in Miami, I mean, he had players around him that were really, really good. You know, he had Wade, he had Chalmers, okay, you throw back. But I don't know. He's done it many different ways, and I think this is definitely going to help his discussion for if he's the best player to ever put on a jersey for the NBA. But that'll be a whole nother discussion. But we're going to head to the MLB, where I think it's going to be a little closer of a finals. And so far, it is much closer. LA winning Game 1, then Tampa Bay winning Game 2 last night. I believe Game 3 is tonight. And by the time you hear this podcast, it will probably be the end of Game 3, and we'll have a leader in the MLB. But seeing what we've done, we skipped basically a week, so we lost a whole round, I believe, in there. And were you surprised the Rays were able to get past Houston, or were you kind of surprised of how close that LA series was last week?
I'd say I was more surprised by the Dodgers Braves series, just because, like we've discussed in other podcasts, the Dodgers were kind of both of our picks to make it to the World Series out of the NL at the beginning of the season. They have the most stars and most firepower, and not that Atlanta's not a good team. I think we both think that they're a good up and coming team. But when the Dodgers got down 3-1, I was like, "Ooh, Atlanta's making a move. They're gonna kind of shock everybody and get to the World Series." And they ended up blowing that 3-1 lead. And I guess the main thing, kind of just looking back at the scores and how they got here, you have to always be, as a team facing the Dodgers, you always have to be afraid of their offensive firepower, because just looking at some of the scores from that last round, even in one of the games they lost, I think they scored 7 runs, which is good enough to win most days. I think they had like 15 runs one game. So basically, as an opponent and as the Rays in this instance, you kind of have to worry, or you have to kind of keep in mind that unless they're having an off day, you're gonna have to score a lot as well. And I guess if I had to make a pick right now, I'd probably go with the Dodgers, just because they do have that firepower. And I know Tampa Bay's got a good pitching staff, and kind of keeps games lower scored, I guess, or lower scoring games for the most part. But I'd still probably go with the Dodgers, even though they did kind of give people a scare in the last round. I think I'd still be my pick. But I think, like you said, it's definitely going to be a closer series. Could go back and forth if Tampa Bay's pitching is on that day. But I think the Dodgers will ultimately come out. But we've seen before that even when they're the favorite, they don't always close the deal.
Yeah, and I think I read something that they've been in like 3 of the last 4 World Series, yet they have not won it. So, is it this year? Is it the year that they do it, or is it just another year that they don't? And I think this will go to Game 7. I think this series is going to be back and forth the whole way. And kind of like what you said, if Tampa Bay can keep the runs low, they can win games 3-2 and 4-3 and stuff. But I don't know if Tampa Bay just has enough firepower to be able to outscore LA if the score is like 11-8 or something. I just don't know if Tampa Bay has enough firepower to contend like that. So honestly, I think the whole series basically comes down to how Tampa Bay pitches and if they can keep LA low. LA seems to just give up that kind of normal run average like every team, but their offense is just so good, and they have so many stars everywhere. Mookie definitely earning that paycheck in the playoffs. He played well this year, and I remember talking about it when he signed the contract on whether or not he was worth that type of money, and kind of through the season, he did okay. Like, he played well, everything, kind of like what he did before. But, the money that he got from that, I was like, how can you be worth that much when you haven't really done anything to prove it? And all he's done this playoffs basically is prove that he's earned that money. Defense, offense, everything, he's basically doing it. So, kind of just put the foot in my mouth that I said earlier on. I don't think he's really worth the money, and I think if LA wins it, I think he's worth every single penny.
Yeah, and I think he's been, at least kind of listening to national guys, he's been basically the difference maker. I mean, he's kind of setting the tone for the team, and I mean, he's somebody you can count on both offensively and defensively. So he's definitely probably I'd say he's worth the money. I think it'll look bad at the end of the contract, and I think I said that kind of when he signed it. When these long contracts, when you get to the guys are 35 to 40, that's when you see the value maybe not be worth it. But I think if the Dodgers win the World Series, they'll probably say all this money and even some of that wasted money at the end of the contract was worth it. So we'll see how it turns out. But he's looking like he's showing his value at this point. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and it's another thing, people wonder why these athletes, certain athletes get huge contracts and they pay him all this money and stuff. And my argument wasn't that he was getting paid too much. I just didn't know if he would bring that value to the Dodgers. And again, yeah, if they win a World Series, he's going to bring so much income to that team that his big contract was worth it. And that's kind of everything when you look at it. I mean, you look at the Chiefs who signed Patrick Mahomes, and they signed him to that 15-year deal that tells fans that, hey, he's going to be here for 15-ish years. And what that tells you is that, hey, go buy his jersey, go buy all the merch you want with Patrick Mahomes' name on it. And basically it just turns into basically the Chiefs are just rolling in money just because they spent all their money up front trying to get Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's what LA's done with Betts, and I think it's definitely going to keep paying off for them in the future. Ready to go to the NFL? And the next thing we're going to talk about is NFL, and it's going to be most of the podcast from now on because we got, NBA's done. MLB will be done this week, next week. So the NFL, we're going to throw in some more sports as well. But right now, the main focus in at least America is the NFL. And something very, very big happened this past week. And basically I wouldn't say the biggest thing that happened, but something that I've kind of just been scratching my head on is Miami has said that they're going to start Tua over the Fitzmagic himself. And I read today something about, I forget what his quote was, but it's something about basically he's just heartbroken. And I don't get it. And maybe you see it a different way, but I mean, the Dolphins are 3-3, which honestly, that's the best they've been in the last couple of years. With Fitzmagic being their quarterback, and they're 3-3. Now their losses were to the Patriots, who are a good team, the Bills, a very good team, and then the Seahawks, a very good team. But then also looking at their wins, they beat the Jags, who not a very good team. 49ers are down this year, and then the Jets, which are probably the worst team in the NFL. But I don't understand how they just blew out their last opponent, and Tua comes in because there's no point in keeping their QB1 in because they're up by so much, and now they're giving their QB2 the job when he went like 2 for 2 with 9 yards passing.
Yeah, I guess I'm not surprised that Tua's gonna be the guy, but I think just kind of what we're both saying is that him coming in this early is surprising because they're basically, I mean, I know this could change, but they're on pace to go 500, go 8-8. They're beating the teams they're supposed to beat, the bad teams. They're losing to good teams. So, I mean, he's not really doing anything that would point to him losing the job. I mean, he's got, Trevor pulled some stats here, but he's got about 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and 95 QBR. And I'd say if the team was like 1-5 and they lost to the Jets and the Jaguars or something, and Fitzpatrick only had, like, say the numbers were switched, he had 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions or something like that, I could see Tua coming in now. But I think it's just a little early because Dolphins are making improvements. They're probably not going to be division winners, but they're looking a lot better than they did last year and the year before. And I know Tua was always the plan long term, but like you said, I mean, they won this last game 24-0. They won the game before that against San Francisco 43-17. And Fitzpatrick's had like 300-yard games this season, so he's really not playing bad. And I think it's too early. I could see if, say they go on a losing streak here, they got the Rams coming up in a couple weeks. They got game in Kansas City, New England, Las Vegas, Buffalo, a tough stretch at the end. I could maybe see Tua coming in then. That'd be more understandable. But I just think it's kind of like we both are thinking. It's a little early, and I know he's going to be their guy going forward, but I think they could have probably just sat him the whole season and had him learn and had maybe the same effect. But I'm not the one in charge, so I guess maybe I don't know everything that's going on there.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just kind of what you said. I don't understand why all of a sudden this came up. It's one thing if Fitzmagic had a bad game where he threw 3 interceptions and 1 touchdown or something, and he's just playing awful, and Tua comes in and he actually shows that he can run an offense and stuff. That's one thing, but he was taken out of the game because they were blowing out their opponent, and so the backup comes in, and then now the backup's taking the job, and he only threw twice. It was for like 9 yards total, I believe. And so, I don't know. I don't understand what good is going to come out of it. I don't know if, because I mean, they're playing as good as they possibly can. They're beating the teams they should beat, and their losses are two really good teams. So I honestly don't get it. But as we found out in the NFL. There's a lot of stuff we just don't understand as fans, and that's fine. We don't need to understand all the drama and everything behind it. Another thing for me, now that we're kind of on the topic of crazy, and I just added it in to our sheet, is the Le'Veon Bell signing by the Chiefs. And when the Jets let him go, I understood why. I get it. They didn't want to pay him all that money, which completely 100% agree. You should not pay him that much money when he's not producing for your team. But there's a lot of reasons, but he wasn't producing for the Jets. And then Bell basically said that he wanted to play for like 3 teams. Chiefs were one of them. And I don't know if you remember what happened when he was in Pittsburgh, but basically what happened was he wanted paid more. The Steelers weren't going to give him the contract, so he set out and said, okay, I'm not going to play then. Which, if you're a fan base and you see a guy say, well, I'm not going to play unless you pay me, and he thinks that he's too good for the football team, is red flags to me as a fan. And so the Chiefs sign him. And I don't know. I think I tweeted out. I said something like, the Chiefs better not sign him because, first of all, we're okay. Our running back situation isn't like a dire thing. Yeah, I mean, our running game could be better. I mean, obviously now what they did last week against the Bills, it's not really up for debate anymore. But it was more of an offensive line rather than the running back issue. And the problem I have with Le'Veon is he thinks he is a great running back, and I knew for a fact that when he set out that year and Connor took off and did exactly what he did when he left, I knew Bell wasn't that good of a running back. And there's a difference between your great running backs that in whatever they're in, they're going to be great. They're going to do great things. You look at like McCaffrey, you look at Saquon Barkley, you look at Derrick Henry. But Bell was only good because he had that offensive line and he had an offense that he worked well in. He goes to the Jets, and literally in the 3 years that he was with the Jets, add those 3 years up, and none of them equal one season that he did when he was in Pittsburgh. And that's just because he didn't have the offensive line. He didn't have the talent around him like Antonio Brown, like Ben Roethlisberger. He didn't have that talent, so it kind of proved that he really wasn't the best running back in the game when everyone was saying, oh, yeah, he's the best running back in the league. And so I just didn't really want him on the Chiefs because I don't want that headache. I don't want that. I feel like he's going to come into the locker room, and I might be completely wrong, but just the way he's acted in the past makes me think he's going to come into the locker room and think he's owed something. And the Chiefs don't need that type of thing in their locker room right now. They seem to have everything figured out. They know who they are. And I guess we'll wait and see what happens. But what did you think about when you heard that Le'Veon Bell was signing with the Chiefs?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of on the other side. I don't know if I was thrilled, but I'm okay with it just due to kind of the fact of maybe getting the offense more weapons. I mean, probably the offense with the most weapons in the NFL to start out with, but just another average to above average guy that you can plug in. And I guess I'm not as worried about him being a locker room disruption this year because I think he's only on a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. I think if they brought him back and had contract negotiations with him next year, that could be a problem. He could kind of go back to maybe his old ways of wanting more money or being maybe more of a disturbance. But it's just kind of one of these 1-year prove-it deals. I'm not too worried about him this year. And, I mean, just kind of having another weapon. And I guess the thing that I thought of first off was this is kind of a Patriots sort of thing and the new kind of dynasty thing in the AFC. And then this is, I mean, I'm never going to hate the Chiefs. Chiefs are always going to be my favorite team, but I think this is one of the reasons people hated the Patriots is like they keep getting these good guys to come in and kind of be weapons for them and everything. And that's just the first thing I thought of is that if the Chiefs keep doing this, I mean, we're going to be happy as Chiefs fans, but the rest of the league might think, oh, they're turning into the Patriots and they're just getting these guys on 1 to 2 year deals to come in and kind of help them win Super Bowls, which, again, fine with us, but that's just the first thing I thought of was this is kind of a Patriots sort of move, which is how they stayed so good for so long, so I guess I shouldn't be upset or anything, but that's just the first thing that came to mind for me.
Yeah, and I didn't even think of that, to be honest with you, because I just thought, maybe the Chiefs thought their running backs were having problems, or maybe they were worried about an injury or something. But I mean, the more weapons, the better. And it's just going to be so hard to defend this team, which is good for us Chiefs fans. But I guess I don't know. I'm worried about the disruptions. I'm also worried about the defense and if we could stay consistent in the playoffs, because last year we were consistent in the playoffs. We played very, very well. But, last year and this year, there's games where it's just like the defense just doesn't even show up. And it's those games that's like, well, if we had a great defense, even if our defense played bad, they wouldn't play terrible. They wouldn't give up 40 points. And yet here we are giving up 40 points to the Las Vegas Raiders, who are they're 4-2, and they're in our division they're 4-2. But I wouldn't say the Las Vegas Raiders are a great team. I don't think that they will be in the playoffs or anything like that. So it's not a team that should be able to hang 40 on a good defense. And so I worry about our defense, and I worry that I guess we didn't spend a lot of money on Le'Veon Bell, but my thought is, why aren't we trying to bolster this defense? I know last year they played good at the very end of the year and in the playoffs, but we've shown that we have hit games where we don't play well. And guess what? In the playoffs, we don't play one game well, we lose, we go home. So there's no 7-game series in NFL, so it only takes 1 week, one game for a defense to play bad. And our offense can even play great, and we still won't be able to win. So that's what worries me, is that we're trying to continue to get more weapons, which is fine. But the thing we need to be addressing, I think, is the defense part before we start, getting more weapons and spending money on offensive guys.
Well, and I'm hoping that the one loss to the Raiders where they gave up 40, I'm kind of hoping that was just we're looking forward to Buffalo to the next game sort of thing, because before then they'd given up 20 points 3 times, then 10 points to New England, and then they only gave up 17 to Buffalo. So I'm hoping that it was kind of a looking forward thing. But you are right that they can't really take a ton of games off. And if they were going to kind of relax for a little bit, the next about 3 weeks here would be the time to do it, maybe get a little bit of rest. You got Denver, who hasn't been great. New York, the Jets, haven't been good. Carolina's been frisky.
Doesn't matter which New York team.
Just say New York. It could be either one. They're both terrible. But they got Denver, Jets, and Carolina here, and then they kind of go on a little bit of a tough run to end the season. They play the Raiders again, and there's Tampa Bay in there, so that's going to be a tough game. But I'm kind of hoping they rest, get kind of settled in, and then as the home stretch comes up in November and December, they kind of start tuning in and kind of getting focused for the playoffs, and the defense gets ready that way. But we'll wait and see. But that's what I'm hoping and praying for as a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, and so we're no longer an unbeaten team, but there still are 3 teams out there that are unbeaten. And might I add, they're all 5-0, not 6-0, because they've all had a bye week so far. So that they might not be necessarily undefeated if they would have played last week. But we got the Pittsburgh Steelers at 5-0, Tennessee Titans at 5-0, and then the Seattle Seahawks at 5-0 as well. And out of those 3, I'm actually really surprised in the Steelers. And I don't know if I guess I just didn't realize they were that good until I watched them last week. And they are that good, and it's no wonder they're 5-0. I mean, they're handling their business, they're getting stuff done. They're doing it in a multitude of ways. They don't have Antonio Brown there to do all this stuff. They're getting guys that you've never even heard of before coming in and getting 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns in a game. And so they're finding ways to win. So if I had to say my biggest surprise out of there is the Steelers. The Titans we knew were good, made it to the playoffs last year and played well in the playoffs. And then Seattle, now that they've let Russell Wilson do his thing, I mean they look pretty unstoppable. So out of those teams, who's your surprise, and who would you say do you think can go the longest before getting beaten?
I agree with you on the probably the most surprising for me is the Steelers. I knew they had a good defense, but it just seems like their offense has been consistent, not great, but consistent, good enough to win. Just kind of looking ahead for them, I think they'll lose here before too long, just because they do have the Titans coming up. So one of those teams is gonna have a loss here before too long. They have Baltimore twice left. They play Buffalo late in the season. They play Indianapolis and Cleveland late in the season. So they have a couple chances to lose. And I guess the biggest thing, I haven't been able to watch a Steelers game, but from what I've heard, the biggest thing for them is their defense, which, I mean, is great to have a foundation on, but just kind of be interesting to see where their offense goes from here. The Titans, I'm surprised with, maybe not as much as the Steelers, but I'm surprised with the Titans just because they've been the team affected the most by COVID. I mean, it seems like every week you hear a story about a staff member or some of their players being testing positive or something along those lines. But somehow they've kind of made their way through and still are 5-0 at this point. Like I said, they face Pittsburgh, so one of those teams will come away with a loss this weekend. And both Pittsburgh and Tennessee, I wouldn't say have played too many of the teams that are kind of in the upper echelon in the NFL. I guess the most impressive win for me for the Titans is Buffalo. And then Pittsburgh, their most impressive win is probably this last one against Cleveland, if I had to pick one. Titans, again, they have kind of a tougher schedule coming up in the AFC. Team I guess I could see going the furthest would be Seattle, just because they've seemed like they've kind of had a shift in the way they approach offense this year and are letting Russ cook. Said that before, but seems like they're kind of letting that go. Their downfall could be their defense. Their pass defense hasn't been great, but that could be a downfall for them. I don't think anybody's going undefeated. I guess I'll say that. And I think in the next 3 to 4 weeks, probably all these teams will have at least one loss. The Seahawks go through their division here 3 out of the next 4 weeks, basically. Arizona this weekend, San Francisco the next week, and then the Rams, in a couple weeks, and they have Buffalo in there as well. So I don't think anybody's going undefeated, and they'll probably all drop here within the next couple weeks. But most surprising, definitely the Steelers. Least surprising, the Seahawks. But kind of surprised we don't have a few more undefeated teams. But been a crazy year.
Yeah, and so the Green Bay lost. Finally, Kansas City lost. Chicago at 5-1. Who would have thought that, huh? After we trashed them, basically said, "Oh, the only thing that's good is their defense," and it's winning them games. It is their defense. It's not like their offense is putting up these godly numbers, but they're just doing enough to get done and get wins. The Bills started out 4-0 and they look strong, and yeah, they've lost their last 2, but I still think the Bills are really good. I mean, early on in the season, I was kind of down on the Bills, and then they went 4-0, and I was like, well, they must be good. They must be good at least because they're 4-0. And then they lost against the Chiefs last week as well, and they still played well. So I don't think them losing 2 in a row is bad for the Bills. I think Bills are definitely going to be a playoff team. I just think that they're not an elite team yet. I think there's probably 5. I'd say there's 6 elite teams for me right now, and that would be the Steelers, the Titans, the Seahawks, and then I got to go Green Bay, Kansas City, and Baltimore. I think those 6 teams. Out of those 6 teams, I think 2 of them will be in the Super Bowl. So, we'll wait and see what happens. But I know you were high on the Bills coming in, and they started out 4-0. Have you seen anything in the last 2 weeks that make you think that the Bills are changing, or do you think they just played 2 tough opponents and just weren't able to come up with the win?
Yeah, I think they may not have as good a record as I thought they were going to, but I think, like you said, they just faced 2 really good teams here in the past 2 weeks. Like you said, Kansas City last week, and then the Titans the week before. I guess the concerning thing, if you had to pick one thing from those 2 losses, was they gave up 42 points to the Titans. Just the defense letting up that much is kind of concerning. I could see them going probably maybe 11-5 or 10-6 around there, which will probably be enough to win that division, just because nobody else is gonna really challenge them, I don't think. And they got the Jets coming up this next week, Patriots week after that, so there's a couple division wins that could pick up. They do face Seattle, so they face kind of one of those upper crust teams that you were talking about. They face Pittsburgh later on, so there's definitely a couple losses that they could have in there. But I still think they're best team in their division by far, and if they can get their defense right, could make some noise in the playoffs. So I'm not too worried. It's just been a couple tough opponents right in a row for them.
Yeah, and speaking of a bad division, the NFC East, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
The Cowboys leading the division at 2-4, and yes, 2 wins, 4 losses, and they're leading. Eagles behind them at 1-4-1, which means they tied a game. The Giants 1-5 and Washington 1-5. Yikes, this division's really bad, and I saw a stat. Well, I don't remember exactly what stat was, but it was something along the lines of during the new Super Bowl era, there's never been a team make it into the playoffs that was like at this rate. Usually they make playoffs, they're like 8-8. Sometimes you get some 7-9 teams in there that have 7 wins, 9 losses, but they're like predicting the Cowboys to go like, I think it's like 6-10 and still get in, which I don't think they've ever had done before. And so, yeah, this division is just awful. And Cowboys aren't going to get any better. Dak got hurt, a huge loss for them. He's done for the season. And so, maybe the Cowboys decide they need Fitzmagic and go out and try to get him or something like that. What do you think of this division? I mean, it could be the ultimate thing for like the Cowboys to finish the season like 6-10 and get like a top 10 draft pick and still get into the playoffs. And I mean, maybe they're onto something here.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised more by the top 2 teams. I think we both thought the Giants and Washington weren't going to be any good, so no surprises there. But I thought the Eagles would be putting up more of a fight. And like you said, the Cowboys, I think we both thought they were going to win the division kind of before the season. And I mean, like you said, Dak getting hurt definitely doesn't help. I guess if I had to kind of look ahead, I'd say maybe the Eagles have the best chance to win, just because I don't see the Cowboys getting any better. They got Andy Dalton, I think, in there now. And I saw, I think it was on Bleacher Report or something like that their players are starting to call out their coaches who are all in their first year with the team and saying like they don't know what to do in certain situations, like they're not prepared at all. And it's hard to really pick a winner because everybody's terrible, but I guess I'd say Eagles, in my mind, probably the best chance. And I don't think I was looking at the same projection as you were, but I saw one somewhere that said the Eagles could go like 6-9-1 with that tie and probably end up winning the division as well, which is kind of within the realm of possibility. So definitely a depressing division, and teams at the top not living up to their expectations, but I really don't know who to pick because Cowboys still have a lot of offensive talent, but they just don't really have an elite person to get to all their weapons. So confusing and kind of depressing for the NFC East.
Yeah, and it's not gonna get any better. We're not gonna get a team out of here that I don't think even goes 500. I don't think any of these teams can get. The Eagles might. The Eagles kind of have, kind of like what you said. They have a better chance of doing it just because the Cowboys are like, they really have nobody now. I mean, I wouldn't say nobody. I mean, they have stars on their team, but I think the biggest thing is they don't have. As I feel like, they don't have a quarterback that could carry them when need be. And all they're going to do is stack the box against Elliott, and he's not going to be able to run. And then, the wide receivers, they can't do their things. Amari Cooper can't do his thing if he doesn't get the ball. And so, yeah, I'm with you. The Eagles are my, I guess, team that I'm thinking is gonna win it. As we're actually doing this, Thursday Night Football is going on between the Eagles and the Giants, and right now it's tied 7-7. So the two bad teams beating up on each other. Love to see that on a Thursday night, but yeah, the division's not looking good, and I'm kind of with you about the Eagles. I think the Eagles will probably end up coming out of this division as winners, and they could possibly have a losing record while doing it. All right, so if we want to talk about some games this week that we are looking forward to, I think the biggest game that everyone's looking forward to is that Pittsburgh coming in at 5-0 against Tennessee at 5-0. Both of these teams still undefeated. Two of the top three teams right now that are undefeated, and they're playing at Tennessee. Do you think it's going to be offensive fireworks? Do you think? I guess, first of all, who do you think is going to win, and how do you think the game is going to go? Do you think it's going to be close? Do you think it's going to be a low-scoring, high-scoring game? What do you think, Mark?
I could see like a 24-17 sort of game, keeping it relatively kind of low-scoring. I mean, I think both teams are built kind of similarly. They rely on the running game quite a bit, and both have quarterbacks that can get the ball around, but not anything like the Chiefs offense or the Ravens offense or anything where they're going to put up 40 points consistently. So I think it'd be a close game. I guess I just think Pittsburgh has a better defense, so I could see them coming out on top. But I think it'll be close and relatively low scoring there.
I think that this game will be literally who kicks the most field goals, because both defenses are good. Both offenses are kind of like what you said, ground and pound. Like, Tennessee's going to run the ball and waste 8 minutes of a quarter, just running the ball. And so I think this game will probably be a super low scoring game. Like, I'm guessing like 16-10 being the score, because I feel like whoever gets close enough to hit field goals is going to have the upper hand, because there's not going to be many touchdowns in this game with both defenses being good and the way their offenses run their offense. Another game I'm kind of looking forward to is Green Bay and Houston. Green Bay 4-1, Houston 1-5. You asked me why I think that's going to be an interesting game, and I think it's just, I don't think Houston's really that bad. I don't think they're really a 1-5 team, and so we've seen Green Bay can actually falter a little bit. We saw that Aaron Rodgers going up against Tom Brady. You kind of saw that Tampa Bay defense pick that offense apart. And I think Houston's defense is pretty good too. And I think Houston's offense is a lot better, has been a lot better in these last few weeks. So I think this game will actually be a little closer than what their records would seem. Seattle 5-0 against Arizona 4-2 could be a game that Seattle loses. Arizona still a very good team. Kansas City at Denver. Kansas City 5-1 at Denver. Not really going to be I'm hoping not going to be a close game. Just want to throw it in here because it's Kansas City. Then we got Tampa Bay 4-2 against Las Vegas 3-2. Could be a good game between the Raiders and Tom Brady. And then the last game to kind of watch is going to be, I think it's a Monday night game between Chicago and the LA Rams. Chicago 5-1, Rams 4-2. If you want to just go through there and pick who you think is going to win and why, and then is there any like upsets you think are going to happen this week, anything like that?
But have a lot of wins against good teams just because they have the talent. So I like Green Bay, but I think Houston could pull off the upset here. If Deshaun Watson gets going, if David Johnson kind of gets back to where he was to start out the year, that sort of thing, I think they could upset them there. Wouldn't be surprised. Seattle and Arizona, I think that's going to be a really good game. And like you said, Arizona could come away with the win there. I could see that one being close but high scoring. Maybe like a 42-38 sort of game or something like that. Kansas City and Denver, like you said, hoping that's not close. It's in Denver, but I think Kansas City's got more firepower there, so not too concerned, but with division games, you always got to worry a little bit. Tampa Bay and Las Vegas. Tampa Bay's kind of rounding into the team that a lot of people thought they were going to be, which is a little sad to me. I've never really liked Tom Brady, so it's kind of sad to me to watch Tampa Bay doing well now. I thought beginning of the year where he kind of struggled, I thought, oh, this whole experiment may kind of be headed south, but they're starting to get things together. And one thing that I saw before we started recording that's concerning for the Raiders is they just put 4 of their starting offensive linemen on the reserve/COVID-19 list, and they already had their fifth starter to start out the year, Trent Brown. He was already on that list as well. So that's really concerning to have basically their starting offensive line to begin the year all down. And that's one of the things that, I mean, every team's got to be concerned about with all this COVID stuff is if it knocks out basically like a whole position group, what are you going to do? Because this article says that the Raiders have 5 remaining offensive linemen on their 53-man roster and then 2 practice squad guys, and then that's it for offensive linemen. So if all these guys are out, then that could really spell kind of a bad turn in the season for the Raiders. So needless to say, I'm picking Tampa Bay there. And then Chicago and the Rams. Chicago kind of, to me, has been one of those teams that's been, I kind of look and I'm surprised by their record every week. They did have an impressive win against Tampa, winning 20-19, and I guess I'm not surprised by them keeping games low scoring because they do have that great defense. But I just think they're going to face teams like the Rams, like they have New Orleans coming up, Tennessee, Minnesota. They face a lot of teams for the rest of the season that could have huge offensive games. So I see the Rams taking this one. It's in Los Angeles. It's a Monday night game. I think the Rams could take this one, and you might see the Bears, kind of start to fall back down to earth here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Chicago and Houston, I think, are not where they'll be at the end of the season. I think Houston will be closer to that 500 mark. I think Chicago will be closer to that 500 mark as well. But we'll have to wait and see how everything goes. The last thing we can talk about is a fantasy recap from last week, and I look forward to who we're playing this week. And I played you last week, and you pooped on me. I decided before the week started because of COVID and everything, and all the injuries I had and everything. I had Dalvin Cook out. Chris Carson was on a bye. Michael Thomas was on a bye. So there's my top 3 picks. Oh, top 4 picks because Nick Chubb is on the IR. Those are my top 4 picks, and I was like, I have nothing. I can't even really field a team without losing out on some good players. Like Chris Godwin, he was out last week as well. And well, he was supposed to be, he ended up playing, but I was scared he wasn't going to play. And so I put a team out there and gave it my best shot, but I had a defense that was on a bye, and my quarterback Russell Wilson was on a bye as well. So not getting many points there. I ended up with 53 points, and I think even if I had Wilson in and my defense in, I wouldn't have got close enough to your team. So your team, definitely a good team, even though you crushed me last week. This week, hopefully I can get Michael Thomas back and Chris Godwin can stay not injured. That would be great. And then I'm hoping after next week we get Dalvin Cook back and hopefully sometime soon Nick Chubb, and then I'll feel kind of more comfortable playing. I think I've lost, 3 in a row, 2 in a row or something like that. But if we want to talk about a winning team, let's talk about Mark's team.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure what was going on with you last week. I didn't know if you just had, I know you're in like 12 leagues or something like that, so I thought maybe you just weren't paying attention to this one or something, but that makes more sense now. I look at your roster and see how many guys were questionable or are still questionable. It makes a lot more sense. I mean, this probably feels like braggy, but I was kind of disappointed in my team last week, even though we won. Josh Allen definitely didn't live up to what he has been doing the rest of the year, and I've kind of been. I have Aaron Rodgers as a backup, so I've kind of been going back and forth between the two of them week to week, depending on who they're facing as far as who I'm going to play. So it'll be interesting this week to see. Tyreek Hill didn't do really anything for me this last week. He only got me 5 points. I had the wrong Minnesota Viking in. I had Adam Thielen in, who's been pretty consistent, but I had Justin Jefferson on the bench, who maybe hasn't been as consistent, but he had 39 points and I think like 166 yards, or maybe that's not the right game, but he had I think like over 100 yards.
It was.
But
he had 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion, 9 receptions.
Yeah, so he had like 39 points sitting on my bench, so that was a major miss by me. Who else? Mike Davis, he kind of stepped back from where he was doing really good for a couple weeks there. He kind of stepped back. George Kittle did great. Don't have to worry about that. Thing I guess I was most disappointed in kind of watching this week was my defense. I've had Indianapolis for most of the season. Not that they're the best defense, but they're consistent. But they gave up 27 to Cincinnati pretty early in the game and only ended up with 4 points, which your defense isn't ever going to get you 20 points usually unless you have like the Patriots defense of last year. But that was disappointing, and I think I switched them out. This week, let's see. Yeah, I picked up Buffalo's.
Okay, so
go ahead.
So you know how you said Indianapolis isn't the best defense?
Yeah.
They are the second best defense
Okay.
behind Baltimore.
Well,
they're on a bye this week, so probably a good time to drop them.
Yeah, and I mean most of the time defenses are interchangeable in fantasy as long as you can pick up kind of a top tier defense, and some of it's who they're playing. Like I picked up Buffalo's defense this week because they're facing the Jets, so feeling they're going to have a pretty good game. They're kind of a rebound game for their defense, but I'm not facing exactly the same thing you were last week. But I have three guys that are on a bye this week. Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, both of the Vikings, they're on a bye. Jonathan Taylor, who's maybe not lived up to what I think he was going to do, running back for the Colts, but he's on a bye as well. And then a couple other guys are facing tough opponents, so kind of going back and forth there. So it'll be interesting. I think I'm at 5-1 now. I'm at second in our league. Still got one undefeated team at 6-0 in our league. But definitely be interesting this week to see how things go. Okay, we thank everybody for listening to the episode. We appreciate you guys and love for you to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, if you watch them on our YouTube channel, wherever you listen, make sure you subscribe. If you haven't seen our YouTube channel yet, you can find that by searching Slackers Sports Show. We post the audio on that as well if you're wanting to listen it that way. And then if you want to follow us on Twitter to get updates on us, any sports stories you find interesting, and episodes of the podcast when they come up, I'll try to do a better job of posting them there. But you can find that at Slackers Sports.